Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Sweet Combat Season 1, Episode 35. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Time and time again, I've given you and Zhao's grandfather the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, okay, you must have some reason for doing this. You can't just be evil. I don't know, next two episodes, maybe they're going to give us some, not, whatever justification they give, it's never going to be justified enough for like what he does. It's like, once again, he doubles, triples, and quadruples down. Not even just him, Aunt G does the same thing too. It's like, you're despicable human beings to do something like that. He saw like, oh, you're heading, like he already knew she was heading to the graveyard, so he set it up so that Aunt G would be there too. It's like, that's all kinds of messed up. You know, and he tries to justify it later on by being like, right, I know it's messed up, but I'm doing this all for your sake. It's like, are you? It's not even, like, this ain't about doing what's best for you. This is about you controlling her. Like, once again, my justification, not even justification, my reasoning has always been, maybe it's, once again, a practicality outweighing the emotional because he's cut his heart off for so long. I mean, you didn't even really respond when Zhao literally said, I know you don't care about me and my sister's feelings, but the fact of the matter is, if you're not going to care about her feelings, I am. So it's all kinds of messed up that it's like you can't just let her live her life. Once again, it's like I keep bringing up the grandfather from the webtoon. It's like these are like these characters are super opposite. Like there's overlap in some regards, but he never went like he would like follow them and make sure they're up, but he would never like fully interfere. He would try from time to time, but it never worked out. Like I said, it was more of a gag in a webtoon. He is just actively out to destroy anything between them because he wants you to be who he wants her to be instead of letting her be who she wants to be. And that's just like the tragedy of it all. But especially because, like, the way how Tien, like... Because, like, the thing is, like... Tien went to Uncle G's grave to apologize. It's like, I'm sorry for what happened, you know? And the fact of the matter is, he was like, I, like, came out of my coma, and he thought, like, maybe on some level, you and my father didn't want things to play out the way they have been between me and you. That maybe things will be... okay, you know? It's like I thought if I came here to talk about your feelings that maybe I could kind of, it was almost like, can I get your blessing for us to find our way forward past all this? And obviously Yu's dealing with everything she knows, well, what she believes she knows about the situation that Tien still doesn't know, so she walks away. Because like he won't like let go. He's like, I want to be able to try and convince you to stay by my side. But as they're leaving, they end up running into Aunt G, who the moment she finds out Tien is who he is, and because he's apologizing, he's like, I'm sorry for what my father, and she's yelling at him, be like, sorry. Once again, it's like, you are so despicable. She said it. I mean, the moment we got that line from the episode of, oh well, whoever like family fell apart, ooh, they were unlucky. That's also the disgusting thing about what her grandfather's doing. It's like, you don't care, like, it's already bad enough you don't care about your own granddaughter. You're making her unhappy. You're like, oh, she'll get over it, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't mean anything. But, like, it made a massive change. Like, your granddaughter was able to be happy in a way she hasn't been for a long time. She found someone in life who'd make her happy. Tien found someone that made him happy, like, brought a spark and change to his life. They've both grown and become better people. They've grown so much because of this, and you're taking that away from them. Because it's not just Yu's life you're ruining, you're destroying Tien. Like, you're not thinking about the ramifications, because he's not family. He's like, oh, that's not my granddaughter, so who cares? Like, whoever has to suffer the ramifications. Aunt G doesn't even care about that. You know, that's the horrible thing of you're destroying people's lives. You know, even if they're not directly correlated to you, to still do that. For Aunt G to manipulate the young woman who was kind of like a daughter to your uncle, like who cared, to your husband, who cared about her like a niece and stuff like that, or a daughter, and to do that and use her and manipulate her and hurt her like that, like, that's such a spit in the face of your, like, that's so despicable, dude. That's the only word I can use to describe it. I mean, other than evil, that is some pure evil shit right there, dude. And obviously throwing all the shade towards Tien, because obviously Fong Yu wanted to leave, so because she was probably afraid of like Tien suffering any backlash, but it's like Tien shouldn't be held responsible for what happened to his dad, and now she's even throwing what makes it even worse is Aunt G is throwing shade towards you, being like, right, you should be on my side, but instead you're taking the side of your Uncle G's sworn enemy. His love was wasted on you. It's like, Jesus, lady. But the point is, she's getting paid to cut deep. You know, she's getting paid to do this, and it's just like, man, that's the thing. Like, if she felt like this, that'd be one thing. It would suck. It would suck so much, but if these were her genuine feelings, you couldn't do nothing about it. But the fact is she's being paid to say this makes it that much more disgusting. It's so sickening. And now it's just like, Tien's like, you know, saying that he can cope with this, and just him and like, you don't even say anything on the ride back, because now he knows, oh, this is what you knew this the entire time and you didn't. He's like, wait, is this why you dropped out of the tournament? And now he's going to blame himself even more, because he's going to be like, right, everything that fell out is because of me, because you were trying to like protect me and my feelings, you know. But he was like, I all can cope. But for him, it's like, for the first time in years, he finally felt better about his dad's situation. It's like, because he's like, all these years, I figured the drinking and everything, our family falling apart, it sucked. But at least it's like, I thought you were doing it because you felt bad because this accident. Now I found out, no, you're feeling guilty because, that's why I was like, would he feel as guilty about it? But I mean, like, maybe it's like, hey, you did the terrible thing and then you get a conscience later. That's probably that's the thought process they have about why he'd be okay with like setting up a fixed fight, but then like drink himself crazy, like to numb himself. But it's like, yeah, you just got a guilty conscience over it. It wasn't because of the fight was an accident. And it's just like, you're tarnishing this man's name more and more. Like, his family went through so much for years. This family struggled so much. And so many people played a part in making that, and you're continuing to do that. You're trying to break him after all the progress he made, but it doesn't matter to you. As long as you're able to keep him and you apart, and if you're able to keep you down the path you want her to go, her grandfather doesn't care. And so for Tien, he starts trying to rip up the photo of his dad, him and his dad, but all he does is crumple it up. And later on, he explains to his siblings, nah, I knocked the frame down, so we have to get another one. But he's like making an excuse, like, no, when I get free time, then I'll buy another one. But it's like, he wants to put off putting it up as long as possible. It's just like, he finally found a place where he was okay. You know, even learning the Death Strike was kind of him coming to terms with so much. He made so much progress to finally be okay, to confront the trauma of the past. And now it's like, that wound is not even just being festered, like getting infected again. It's being spread. Like, they sliced the wound even deeper and made it an even bigger wound. That's the heartbreaking thing. So Queen like went to run back to Tien's place, but like she couldn't bring herself to go in, because it's like, who am I? Like, I'm not qualified to comfort him, you know, because like all I'm going to do is like make things worse if it's coming from me. And then there's also the element of like, I'm not, just mentally, I'm not in a position, because I have my own complex feelings about it, so I doubly can't be the person. So she goes to Yanan, who comes to check on him, and it's like, you know, are you okay? And for him, it's like, yeah. And obviously she explains, like, yeah, like, Queen just wanted to protect you from all that. But Tien's like, I'm not alone. I have my siblings, and I can't fall apart again. I've got to be there for them. So he plans on kind of sticking it through all the way. And ultimately, you know, Queen is, you know, well, her and Yanan had that moment later on, because Tien says he now completely understands why Queen's done what she's done. And he's like, I won't pursue her. Like, I won't like try to push that on her of us like figuring it out and getting back together. I won't push that anymore. So, and just kind of, he'll kind of leave her alone, and just kind of, once again, kind of wishes her the best. And later on, Yu is crying, because I think on some level, like, it's like, for one, like, oh my, like, I'm going to be leaving soon. And, well, she decides, I think, the next day she decides, like, okay, I'm going to leave. But it's just the heartbreak of, I wanted to protect him from this, and now he has all that, and I'm not even going to be around to help him, because I can't do anything for him. I don't think I can, is what she's feeling. And it's just also like, I think on some level there was something nice about, maybe on some level, because she herself, I think, was beginning to feel like maybe, just maybe, I can stay, maybe this will all work out. Like, but now it's like, yeah, it's like, it's fully over, you know. He's kind of finally giving up on like there being anything between us. Like, as long as he kept going despite everything, I think there's some little part of her that was kind of happy, being like, maybe there's still some chance. And now it's like, that's dead in water in her mind. So, And just like her and Yanan hugging, and like it's like, right, you crying is going to start making me cry, so don't cry. And just like all she can do is like hug her bestie, and it was beautiful. But the next day, Queen is like, right, I'm going to be leaving like Friday. I've set it all up, so like the day after tomorrow, I'm going to go. And obviously her brother's not too happy about this decision, but her grandfather's just kind of like, yeah, good. But her brother tells her like, right, I'm not going to change your decision. But he's like, at the end of the day, whatever happens, let all of this pain go and live your life. Like, I just want my beautiful sister back. Like the sister that he felt so much like you hit her, like she's always led by example, like how she's lived her life, and he's always been proud of her for that. And it's like, I want you to go back to being that person again, so just let everything go. But before you leave, like, don't you want to say a proper goodbye to Tien? Because you need to. Because if you don't, you're going to hold on to all these regrets, you know, and that's all life will be. She's like, because it's like, if you've really let go, then delete this photo of Tien and just cut it. But she's like, no. And it's like, so say a proper goodbye, let everything go if this is what you're going to do, because you don't want to like leave any regrets, anything left unsaid, like pour it all out. And so she goes to see Tien and tells him that she's leaving like the day, like she's leaving Friday. And ultimately, the conversation about like, right, that there are just some obstacles in life you can't overcome. But she's also asking him like, please don't give up on the universe. And he's like, I'm not going to, you know, he's like, he says a line of, I've already kind of given up too much to give up anything else, you know, and that's a heartbreaking line. So it's just like, right, I can't be in a position to give up anything else, because I don't think I'd be able to take it if I gave up anything else, you know. So like I said, she's been that like that just like she says Tien has been her warmth. I guess it's almost like a thing of like, you know, they've kind of been a fire and ice to each other. Like he's warmed her heart, which would have been kind of so cold for a while. And I guess the argument could be like she's kind of done the same thing for him, or maybe the argument could be she chilled the rage and sadness that was in his heart. Like, you know, I'm sure that's not a great metaphor, but you get the notion of what I'm trying to get across. So I'm just so curious how the truth is going to come out, because once again, Zhao Mi still has a piece to the puzzle that she hasn't connected yet. So I'm curious to see what's going to be the tipping point that finally pushes this all together, where Zhao Mi ends up being the reason this all gets exposed. Maybe Aunt Ji will get exposed, and then she'll be like, well, I did this because your grandpa put me up to it. Because their relationship will never recover from this. Like, I mean, we only got like 2 episodes left. There's not going to be any resolution on that. It also kind of adds to what with only 2 episodes left. I was curious. I'm like, yeah, it's because I brought this up when like Tien was in the coma. I was like, well, I was wondering if this would be a lane of trying to get his mom back in the story. But it's like, no, we're going like the webtoon route of never covering that. You know, obviously, once again, the trauma and the effect it had, sure, but she's never popping back up in the story. So I think that's so interesting. They decided to still keep up with that and not tackle that at all. Because, I mean, that's a lot of trauma to deal with on top of it. Like, yeah, you abandoned me and my siblings. To be fair, like, that's something she has to deal with. Like, Tien can't take that upon himself. To be fair, he kind of has. But he also put a lot of that on his dad and everything related to Uncle G's death. So it's like, that'd just be too much trauma to kind of deal with. Like, you already have to deal with the aftermath of, like, your family falling apart because of your dad in a way. But now also your mom. It's just, you know. Because she also never came back, because it's like, there's too much shame involved. It's like, I abandoned my family. Like, how could I ever come back and try to ask for forgiveness? I think that's where that kind of stems from, you know? Speaking of Zhao Mi, she's kind of going through it this episode, because she was going through it at the end of last episode too, where she feels sad without Hao around, you know, and she actually goes to sit down with Mama Hao, and it's just like, oh, like, Hal's been kind of like a little depressed these couple days. Like, did you two fight? And she's like, no. And it's kind of like, yeah, but it's like he's not talking to me, so it's got, you know, it's kind of annoying. But then like Hal's mom is like, yeah, that's kind of expected. Like, I always so used to you two like bickering and stuff like that, and even bringing up the metaphor. And it's something I brought up last episode too. She used the sun and air as an example of like, right, when you're so used to the sun and air, you kind of take them for granted. You know, they've always been by your side, so you never realize like how good it is to have them around. And I brought up that point too, where it's like Zhao Mi and Hao have been attached to hip for so long that it's like she's so used to him being there that it's like now that he's gone, it's just kind of weird, you know? and she doesn't know how to like really feel about all of that, you know. And later on, I love that she's in Taekwondo class being like, yeah, how? He's going to apologize to me. No, because it's like she had figured out like, right, how is it my son? He's my sunshade, because there's all these moments of him like blocking the sun for her, and she's just kind of like she's pouting. And then later on she's like, fine, I don't need him to be my sunshade, and she's covering herself up. Later on at the Taekwondo club, she's like, he's going to do this, and I'm going to accept his apology, and I'm going to say this in response to his apology when he comes, like, apologizing. I was like, it's so sweet how she's like, yeah, I expect an apology from him. Yeah, it's going to be, like some of those moments she would have with Tien where she's kind of fantasizing about, like, stuff between them. Oh, this is going to happen. But then, like, to have that about how apologizing is kind of sweet. She's not picking up the signs there. Because at the same time, this is all going down, whereas like Yanan and Hao are trying to parent trap their parents, which we get the conclusion of that, where I also have to take back what I said last episode too, because the way I was reading it made me think like, oh, maybe it isn't males on her family side too, but the subtitle says everyone on your most of everyone on your mom's side has this. I'm like, oh, so that does include something. Like, does that mean Hao doesn't have it, but maybe there's a chance he could have had it? I don't know. It's not that big of a detail to get caught up in, but it's still the big detail of it's not just her. Other people in the family have it too. So for him, it's like the moment he found that out, he's like, okay, it became less about the birthmark. It's like the birthmark was the entry point, and now it's just like the more time I spent around her, I've just come to realize how much of a good woman she is, how great she is. And ultimately, Yanan has to kind of back her dad up. It's like, okay, my dad's not always the most trustworthy or reliable. He's like looking at her like, hey, like, come on. But he is trustworthy and reliable. So they're trying to set this whole thing up. So Yanan's kind of taking the same approach with Zhao Mi and Hao, with the same approach she's taking with her dad and Hao's mom, of like trying to keep her dad from seeing her by keeping her in the gym, even getting Guanyan to like keep him in the gym. So it's like, right, kind of like, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder type of thing. Even to the point it got Miss Hao's mom thinking about it, because she was like, like the same metaphor she used on Zhao Mi earlier in the episode, the son and heir, came back, especially when one of like her friends or one of the aunties was like, hey, I haven't seen Mr. Cheng around. Like, could it be, could it be that he's interested in you? The fact is he would come around here all the time. And she's like, oh, really? Maybe your gossiping scared him away. But, like, she's kind of being like, oh, I'm kind of crazy thinking about that. But it has gotten her thinking, so we'll see where things kind of go on that front. But like going back to the Zhao Mi and Hao of it all, Yanan kind of points out like, yeah, it's pretty obvious that you're super into her, and she thinks back to all these moments where she watched him go kind of above and beyond, like covering her in shade, even like feeding her. It's like, oh, here's some juice. She's like, you're pesky, and he's like, oh, eat this. She's like, you're pesky. Oh, let me massage you. So it's like that's where the supermarket thing where he was envisioning that came from. But yeah, it's always easier for other people to recognize that stuff from the outside than the person involved. That's kind of what Yanan was even saying, because it's happened multiple times where it's like Yanan's the one that's pretty clear about how like Queen felt about Tien, and then also Queen was so obvious of like it was like so obvious about Guanyan and Yanan. So it's like, it's funny. It's like, yeah, it always takes the outside perspective to make you kind of bring things into focus. And so for her, it's like her saying that line of calling him little bro, which I thought was so interesting, considering like Hao had that whole dream about like that whole like fantasy about like, well, technically he is the older brother, technically speaking. So, which is something I'm surprised I didn't think about immediately, because I've talked about and referenced this before, that in the webtoon, Moon Young has talked about and commented on how like she thought of Jaegu as like a little brother. I never thought about it until like I was watching this episode and her calling like him little bro. I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because as I've stated before, obviously Tien's the more direct parallel to Jaegu from the webtoon, but certain aspects of the character, as I've discussed previously, of Jaegu's character have gone into Hao's character. Some elements, not a lot. Like I said, Tien's the more direct parallel, but there's some elements that are translated. And so Yanan's never referred to Tien as brother, more like a friend and stuff like that. But it's like that conversation. I mean, to be fair, they literally could end up being family, so it makes sense why Yanan and you would view Hal especially that way. But it feels like that's almost a wink and nod to the webtoon in that regard too. So I thought that was just kind of, like I said, I never even thought about that until I was watching this particular episode. I was like, oh, I'm surprised that never crossed my mind last episode. So, or the episode before that, whichever it was. I think it was last episode when it really. No. It was the episode before last. It was like, episode 33 that really came up. So obviously, Hal's kind of upset because, like, once again, it's so obvious to Yanan how he feels about Xiaomi, but for Xiaomi, it's completely like unclear. So that's what's so frustrating. And I even love later on Xiaomi sneaks into the boxing club and she's overhearing the conversations between them because they're kind of talking about like a Romeo and Juliet story and how that's not. I think she was more so referencing. She said me because like she's playing middle ground to so many relationships. Once again, she's been the wingman to so much. Her dad and Mama Hao, Sun Hao and Xiaomi. Tien and you. So it's like it is funny how she has been kind of in the middle of like this Romeo and Juliet complicated thing across. She probably was more so referencing Tien and you, but like she does find herself playing matchmaker across the board. And so I love that Hal starts using that metaphor about the frog and stuff, but it started pissing Xiaomi off because it was almost like no, that was our thing. That metaphor was between us, and now you're sharing it with Yanan. Because, like, they had gotten close. I think it was even last episode, Hal was kind of pissed that he's like, right, it didn't even cross your mind that something was happening between me and Yanan. But it's like, but now it's like extra annoying because they've been getting closer and spending way more time together. Even though, like, he'd always spent time with Xiaomi. And it's like, no, I don't like that. And it's like, Hal, come here. But then, like, Yanan stops him and is like, hey, we're actually going to go eat frog. He's like, we are. And I love every time he's like saying something she like contrary to what she's saying, she would push him down so that he's short, like down to her height level and be like, yeah, we're going to do that just to annoy Xiaomi. And she even loves it because it's like, Yanan, like they've always had their back and forth, but this is kind of one of the few times Yanan, like whether it being because usually Xiaomi might come out on top or it might be a draw, but this time she literally left Xiaomi speechless because she's like, oh, it feels so good to mess with you. It's like, oh, like, because it's like, right, you already have a boyfriend, so like, why are you messing with like Hal and using him like this? She's like, oh, to be fair, you don't have a boyfriend, but it's okay for you to like treat him like a slave and use him however you want to. It's like, right, me and Hal are friends, and it's like, oh, but only you can be friends with him, right? And she was kind of like, well, you, and she couldn't find the words. It's like, wow, you have literally flabbergasted Xiaomi. Like, not many people are able to do that, and that's why Yana was feeling like, she's like, oh man, that felt so good. That was so much fun using her jealousy against her. So it's like, yeah, the whole situation is just meant to make her realize like how she really feels about him, even to the point near the end of the episode, I think it's even at the end of the episode, she ended up like going into the shower. She's like, yeah, I'm just coming here to see, Hal, because, he's my closest friend. He's my best friend. And I mean, that's all there is to it. I just want to talk to him. I'm like, it's so cute seeing you act that way. But the only person in there was Tien. And she's like, wait, Hal's not in here? But she doesn't even say that. She's like, I thought, oh, it's just you back there. And Tien's like, yeah, it's just me. And she's like, oh, I want to console you about the whole, you and you breaking up, but I got something I got to deal with first. He's like, okay, and she doesn't even recognize, like, normally, like, the fact is, in that moment, it's your relationship of Hal is so much more important than you worrying about Tien. You're more worried about Hal now, because you're like, I want us to be good again, but like, he's not around me anymore, and I'm like, I don't like it, and she's not recognizing the sign. It's actually really cute and beautiful, so. As I stated before, there's only 2 episodes left, so I'm very, very excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode, the penultimate episode of the series. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.